Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon. Wait for some people to gather and we'll kind of get started here. Hope you guys all had a good long weekend. What did everyone do this weekend? What did you guys get up to? Hello. Okay, we'll start at a plain template here in a second, but worked. Honestly, same. Okay, so we did start the week off a little bit better than where we ended on Friday because we still had those core ranges. I know it doesn't seem like it's progressive, but it actually is in comparison to our past pins, like at 6.8, 6.9, 6.7, 6.6. Like these were not the most constructive core pins. Does that make sense? And even though these were like okay holds above our 6.2, 6.3, 6.4 areas, holding core areas back in here would have been a little bit better. It would have given us a better odd of sustaining the zone, which they did do. Like they brought it back to 63.90, 63.92, but they weren't able to bring it back to the 64.20s. Does that make sense? Like these, even these pins back here, back in here, they kind of failed the zone. They couldn't really get into the upper channel, like above 64.41, 64.48. So I think that these types of structural opens can give us a reset. Does that make sense? Even though obviously sustaining the zone would have been the best case scenario. So sustaining the zone would have looked something like this. Let me just jot this down quickly. Okay, so sustaining the zone would have probably looked more so like this, which they kind of did back here, but we have a better sustainment of core areas this week. If you start at a core area, so 64, 74, 64, 78, that's a core range, right? What's another core range? What's your first core range beneath there? Beneath these upper core areas here, so these being core ranges, 8.5, 8.6, 8.8. You can see that they stalled the 8.5, 8.8 area overnight back here. Hence, they never really, they did get back into the zone, but they stalled a little bit. So I noticed that they broke 88, 89, but kind of stalled around 90 back here. So this is like a slight, what's your next core range, guys, from here? So this is where the zone entry is back here. So they did technically enter the zone, but then stalled. What would have been your next core area? So I'd say that they had some decent resets. Yeah, the 20s. So on a basis like this, like so Friday they stalled the neutral range that brought it back down to the 50s. Back in here, they did enter the zone, but stalled to break like 64, 95, 96. Excuse me, like the big 6497 area, hence bringing it back down to the 50s. You can kind of see that they ranged around core ranges here, like above 6.6, but beneath 8.5. This is a core range, right? Like these areas here, like 8.5 to 6.6. These are core ranges, okay? So, and they did consolidate there for a while last night. Do you guys consider this an overnight core consolidation? What do you guys think? Like this looked like a pretty solid overnight core consolidation, but they weren't breaking. So hence making like lower highs, lower lows until they finally got the push down. Notice where they stalled. Where did they stall when they broke down? The 20s, right? Because this is a core to core move. When you get a core to core move, approximately how many points do you normally get? Don't get this wrong, because I feel like I've recapped this so much last week and the week before. And now we're finally seeing a nice example of it happening in real time. So even, okay, let's say if we measure even off of opening range, approximately how many points can you get from a core to core move? Yeah, at least 50, 51, 55. That's usually the range, right? Because midpoints are like 25 points. Upper range is about 50 to 55. So that's right. So overall, I think they gave us like a 56 point move here. Do you see it? So that's your first core range. Notice back in here, they stall to break back into the channel. Okay, so your channel usually starts between, let me just move this a bit higher. This should be about here. This should be, oops. Okay. Your channel range is usually between 4.9, 4.8, and the 3.2. Okay, so this is the channel. So they failed to break back into the means back here and back into the channel. So that implied that they could likely do what? Especially if they come back to your lower core ranges. So like that would be like the 20s, like 6.4, 2.2, 2.1. I feel like sometimes if you have it like this, it's a bit better. Okay. What does that imply that you're heading down to? Especially if you don't hold the zone. And I noticed that even on their first attempt of trying to hold the zone, it was fairly weak. So obviously I would have preferred that they held 6.4, 8.8 to 6.4, 8.3, 6.4, 90, right? 9.6, but they weren't really sustaining too well here. Like they nested a little bit in this box. I don't know if you guys can see this. Why is this? I swear I'm not crazy. You guys saw me put that in, right? Why is it doing that? 6, 3, 8, 8. There we go. Okay, this is the zone. Why is it? Oh, you know why? I don't have 1 selected. I thought I was going crazy. I was like, I swear to God, it keeps deleting that. Okay, so it did try holding the zone. Do you see this here? This area back here. So it tried a little bit, slight breach right here. This was fine. What was the problem back here? What did they fail to retrace in this box range right here? That's a failure to retrace neutral range, right? Back above like 6407, 08, 6410. And then they breached it just slightly, okay, holding the 8.3. And I did say that they could bring it a little bit beneath like 8.8, like around like 8.5, 8.3, 8.4. That would still be okay. The idea was that they would just hold the 80s. And the reason why I said that is because based on like the kind of range that they initially broke. So like when they breach back here, like I noticed that like beneath the upper zone, do you see that? It was about 5 points. Do you see this? Back in here? So, and it was kind of the same range differential between here, okay, from where they stalled and where they brought this back down. It was also a very similar range differential between here and stalling the 9.6, 9.7 area. Do you see that? Like back up in here. I just want you guys to see the offsets here. So that's kind of the theme so far that the market's moving in. So like they took it 5 points beneath 6433, but also 5 points above 6422 back here. They then breached this 5 points beneath, okay, but then stalled in terms of bringing it back above, like back in here. I don't know if you guys can see this, especially based on like the closing ranges. like open, close, highs, lows. So I figure that there's probably a good probability that they take it to core ranges. What would be your next core range beneath the 20s? So here, for instance. So if we measure this from, let's just say our overnight highs, we had about 56.25, which makes sense because core areas are usually 51 to 56 points. That's a core-to-core move, okay? What do you guys think? You think that this is enough to be considered max downside for the session today, holding around 6371? What do you guys think? Also, do you think that this is enough max upside? I've got positions on too, guys, and the market's obviously going to be volatile here, so try to at least participate. Otherwise, I'll just end the stream and focus on my own positions. Yeah, so this is technically enough to be considered a max range. They could take this lower based on where they actually opened the real-time session today. So real-time open today, they had it start us off at, I think it was like the neutral range, right? When they started back here, where was it? Yeah, 639825. So that's not a terrible open. It's at least in the zone, but it is in the bear zone. So like it is in this, let me just delete this so you can see. It is in this little red box that they opened it back here. So that can technically imply some volatility. So, but it being in the zone means that they probably want to try keeping it in this box range here. The best area for them to close the session today would obviously be in the 6420s, like in a core range, or bringing it back to the channel if they can nest it there, because that's going to give us the best shot of getting back to essentially our weekly spot. So let's clear this up quickly. So from weekly opening range back down to here, they've moved about 107 points. And that makes sense because usually when you get a core-to-core move, it's about 51 to 56 points. They've had double core-to-core moves back here. Usually that's around 107, 110 points, 115. Those are also your quarterly increments of thirds, right? Because 107 points is the third ratio, 115 is a fourth ratio. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's kind of the moves that they're making right now. We obviously want to try getting back to a full range, which would take us back to like 6,500s. A 128 point move from here off these lows would get us back to 6,500. Does that make sense? Or like 6,499. They're still based around neutral spots though. So I've noticed even today's open is a neutral open. A retracement back would be a neutral retracement. So that could imply some volatility on the week if that's the case. Whereas if we have full range down, okay, there's still a lot of confluence around 6350. Do you see what I'm saying? Or even around like 6340s. That'd be a bigger structural break if they fail to come back and retrace. I didn't fully measure the range from here down, but I think half that range is the top of the zone. Yeah, it is around 6432. 6445. So that makes sense. Because even getting this back to 66, 68 point range, I think would basically give us an odd of going back and nesting in the channel. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why I was saying I think that could be the best case scenario for us, okay? If they can get this back into the channel somehow, especially off today's real-time open. So today's real-time open was closer to here, Okay, like around here. I think that would give us an odd of even getting back to the means, which they don't really have to get back to the means. Like they don't have to get this back to 64.57, 64.58, but obviously that would really help mitigate some of the risk that we're facing. So like a 68-point move would be like closer to getting back here, which would obviously bring it back to this support range and back to where this initial bigger downside was triggered, right? When they failed back in here. That's where all the volume came in. So there's a lot of liquidity there. There's still an hour and a half left in the day. So a lot of this is obviously going to be catalyst based right now. With no problem with I guess Trump's speech. That chat in there is insane. Yeah, it is doable, but they definitely have to start moving here pretty quick and then obviously break out of this neutral box. Where did you guys take a long? So I was saying earlier that I obviously want to see if they can hold here. Otherwise, there's some risk down to 6.4, 6.3, 5.7. Based on the fact that it is a core to core move, there is a good chance that they could try holding the 70s. Okay. Like lower core areas start around like 6.6. And I think that this type of sustainment, what do you guys think? I was trying to measure this earlier because we did obviously have some risk down to these areas here. I feel like if they had taken this back down to this range, let's say even like to our 6.3 calculated spot, this really could help us offset some of the risk that we're facing. Okay, so even if let's say they took it all the way back down here, okay, there could be some odds of at least retesting 2.322, right? Or from real-time highs. Do you see how that could bring you back to the channel? Basically like 64, 34, 32 areas. So they might have helped us offset some of this a little bit. Because we have a lot of risk if we break back to 64, 60s, and 50s. Well, also too, I noticed that they consolidated for a good amount of time, right? So like back in here, you see like this window of consolidation at our 8.8. So this lasted about 35, 36 minutes. Do you see this? And then you needed really good strength there. So, because market knows that failing beneath 8.8, 8.7, 8.3 is not good, right? So I noticed that a lot of these consolidation windows have been approximately that today. Do you see that? And then I noticed back in here it lasted a little bit longer. Do you see this? Especially off the lows. We had some pretty good odds around like 228, 232. So we're going to watch this window here. Does this help you guys though at least have like a decent idea of like the kind of ranges? So usually core to core is going to be 64 or 63.70s, 64.20s, 64.70s, 65.20s. Okay, so that means that we have odds this week if they hold the 63.70s to get us back where. And this is why I'm saying they might do this to give us better resets if we're lucky, obviously. So if they want to give us some better structural resets, then it would be more so of opening around the 70s versus, you know, the 60s, right? Closing higher versus closing in like the 50s, 60s, closing or testing above 14, 19, like closer to the 20s, 30s. Do you get what I'm saying? If that was the case, then we'd have some structures that look like this. So like a good close up here, let's say. Okay. Like they close this up here. You'd have some better structural breaks to kind of like, it would be like a negation candle basically. Maybe back to the 70s, 80s if they want to break this out into two parts, since we have better odds on the 4th anyway, and the 4th could be our day of retesting the 20s. This is one scenario if they hold the line, okay? If they don't hold the line, let's say they fail to hold and sustain this area here, that's where they could bring this back down to the 20s down here, okay? And the 20s are a really big spot. That would kind of be like coming back and retesting core ranges from back here and like this bigger structure. So this would be a wider downside scenario, which obviously would need a lot more relative strength in that case. And this is more so breaking us back down maybe closer to like a, this would be like breaking like a 150 point interval, because right now we're basically holding 150 points, I think. Yeah, we are 151 exactly. What is 151 points, guys? Don't get this wrong. What's 151 points? And this happens a lot when markets are volatile and they go back and forth. And this is where you can experience like odd amounts of range. What's 151 points? It's the half point of 246 and 346. It's kind of like the 150, 151, right? 300, 301. So it's usually when markets are kind of indecisive on the direction and range that they want to give. So it's like midpoints between 256, 346 is always 150.5, 151 to 1 to 301, 305. Okay? Do you see how that could take you back to your 6220s? You have to understand this, because I said it in the Discord this morning. I don't really think many people were understanding what I was saying, but this is how we can get that area again, okay? So if we lose the zone, we're back at risk of 6363, which really increases our risk of going back to the 6320s, right? And then that would be the wider range risk around 6210, 6220 areas. 6220, 6210, a really big spot for us. Is that a huge area for the market in general? The 6210, 6208 area. 6212. Yes, okay, why? Okay, 256 points above 6468 is, or beneath 6468 is around that 6208. So do you see how opening around 63 or 6474, 6478 is more correlated with what? Everything is linked back to 6212, 6220. It's a really, really big spot in general for the market, okay? Do you see this? 256 points beneath this week's open is that 62, 22, 23. Do you see it? 622275. I need you guys to see this because it's pretty important. So do you see how these areas could actually be better in terms of range and structure in comparison to the past? I know it doesn't really seem like it's better, but they actually are. They're a little bit more constructive. almost why I would have rather they just tested that back in here. Like, remember back on August 1st? And this is only if they don't retrace, okay? What day this week do we have the best odds to negate? And it was very similar back here because you see how they immediately negated. Yeah, the 4th has really good odds of negating. So obviously the 3rd has to have some pressure too because that's the day ahead of the flip. So we have to really start watching some of these structural points here too. Getting back in this area here is really going to help us avoid major continued downside risk tomorrow. Because if we have continued downside risk tomorrow, does the 4th have a lot of pressure to retrace, sustain, negate like major downside risk? So the 8-day flips over on the 4th. There's some inside structures that kind of run until mid-month. 12-day flips over on the 4th. This is a pretty nasty star-like structure too, so I actually didn't see how, like you see how this could be an outside bar, this could bearish engulf basically, and they did kind of break the 50% ranges here, like a beneath 63.81. That's why also holding the 80s would have been a little bit better. Hello. So there is a little bit of risk with this based on where they took this to. And that puts quite a bit of pressure for them to bring this back to a sustainable range. And I would say that that would probably be closer to those 40s, but it's not necessarily required. I think even getting this back in the 20s is probably fine. That's probably more than enough, but we definitely don't want to be breaking back to, like, this area here is still a risky spot. Do you see this? It's still 25% of the ratios. So getting back in this area here would be best case scenario for us to avoid some continued downside risk for the week, especially ahead of the 3rd. Okay. Are you guys okay if I reset the chart? I think everyone should have a pretty good understanding now of like where we're currently stuck, where we're trading, the kind of ranges we're working with. Has no one said anything yet? Just still So they are stalling OR a little bit here, and I noticed that this is also just above like a 17-point range. So we definitely want to try keeping this above 9.7, 9.8. And this is also the exit out of this neutral box here too, like the bear zone. So avoiding heading back beneath this area into this range here would be best, especially during this period here. We had some odds of trying to get it out of this range here, but they definitely stalled. So it seems like they're extended a little bit more through the 4.2, 4.8, 50 just before 3. I still haven't heard anything on Trump yet, right? He's not on the mic yet, is he? And then from a high to low ratio, we've already hit 42 points. So like from back here, we definitely need at least over like a 44-ish point ratio. Today is a core to core day though, so you could look for more like 50, 55, 56. Off opening range to highs, they've still stalled close to like the 20. Do you see what I'm saying? Like this is closer to like the 25, 27 point ratios, and that makes sense because it's a core to core day. Obviously, if they start expanding, then you could start looking for the 32, 33 point ratios, which would be closer to like the 3.1, 3.2 off open. So that would still keep us zone bound. Only entries of entering into the channel would be if they can give us like a 66, 67 point break. So let's see, we have some more odds around this period here, but we're definitely at risk if the longer we stay stuck in between this bear zone here. They're kind of just nesting neutral spots here. I'm gonna mute myself, guys, if that's okay.
Within 48 hours, you could be eligible to get rid of up to 80% of those debts. All you have to do is apply to check to see if you're eligible. Click that blue button below the video right now. Fill out our short questionnaire on the next page, and that's it. You're on your way to debt freedom. Your case will be reviewed by a licensed debt relief specialist from your home province. Our experts are licensed by the federal government to negotiate debt settlements with your creditors. They can negotiate a lower total amount of debt for you. Maybe you're paying $600 or $700 a month. How would that change if you're only paying $200 or $300 a month? That leaves the rest of your cash for you to spend on your family, kids, holiday gifts, or even save for a vacation or a new car. Click the blue button below this video right now. Fill out our short questionnaire on the next page and see if you're eligible for a debt relief program in your province today.
So there were some odds here breaking down OR, which they did so far. They also have odds to try to come back and negate during this period here, so I just don't really think it'd be good if he comes on when we're trading in this box range right here. Like we're definitely better off being above 9.9. Like we don't really want to be in this box because that'll definitely increase odds of heading lower, at least coming back to retest the lows. How did you guys trade this today? Did any of you guys try the long this morning off the 6488 hold, like back here for 6420s? Like that was the goal. And then we already know that that's kind of the, so idea is, this is what I was saying this morning, is hold the zone and then try retracing back 6420s, but it's a little bit of a tougher breakdown here because I waited just to see how much lower they take it. Taking shorts off 6420s, 6410, 15, definitely not a bad idea in terms of the retest based on where they opened today and based on the fact that they had breached back here, right? If they hadn't breached back here and opened where they opened, then we probably would have had a better odd of clearing above 2.3, 2.6, 3.2. But this here put us at a bit of a volatility risk. So did today's open. So they're definitely kind of playing both sides here. This here gave us a good odd of sustaining core areas though, because if they never broke the 20s back here, we probably would have not held the 70s down here. Okay, so it is a bit of a battle. And do you see now how they're kind of putting it right between neutral and bear zone? So this is going to be the toughest part in the day because these areas imply what? Don't get this wrong. These are very, what? Between this yellow box here and this red box here, what do these areas usually imply? They're basically trading this between the yellow and orange zone with a slight odd of like this red box here. Yeah, risk, because it's not really defined, right? Like it can give you wider range, but it can increase volatility. So if we're stuck in this area here, well, it's not really just bear, it's like bear, neutral, neutral, okay? So which area would you want to be back above? And don't forget our past ranges. Don't forget how important 6508 was, 6510, right? These areas were really, really, really important. So, and it makes sense because it's also above 6405. What would be a good area to get us back to? Even if it's not 6420s, getting us back here at least reduces the risk of going back down here. Where would that be? Yeah, at least 08 minimum, I would say. Like 8, 10, 12, these are going to help us reduce risk. They did stall the top of the neutral zone at 64.1375. Top of the neutral zone is right around here. They stalled at 64.1375. We'd have to break 64.14-ish. No, not the blue area. We need just a minimum of like 08, 10, 12, this area here. Okay. That's also a 33-point break off lows, by the way. If they break this, like 34 points off lows is above 6405. So basically, we want to get back at least above 6405. Okay, because this is also the exit into like the yellow box range instead. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much. It's a very important day and an
important
announcement with
Can you guys
great
hear
friends
that?
of mine. I think I can say this group is.
This was the
every
point
one
in
of
time
them.
for turnaround between 48 and 50.
10. I can't always say that, even if they're Republicans, and these are Republicans, great Republicans. I want to thank you all for being here. for this important announcement. 7 years in the making. As you know, this has been going on for a long period of time, and I am thrilled to report that the U.S. Space Command headquarters will move to the beautiful locale of a place called Huntsville, Alabama, forever to be known from this point forward as Rocket City. Okay, so Huntsville, Alabama. We love Alabama. I only won
Do you
by
guys
about
see this?
47 points.
Look at where they're testing on
I
the
don't
first
think that
stick.
influenced my decision,
We're so
though.
smart.
That
We need to
didn't,
get that
right?
6405 break.
But we had a lot of competition for this, and Alabama's getting it. Huntsville in particular.
This
so
is the area that we want to get
congratulations,
this back
everybody.
to,
Katie,
basically.
Congratulations.
At least this wall
This
here.
will
Can someone
result in
document
more
that
than
stick?
30,000 Alabama jobs, and
248?
probably much more than that, and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, and that's billions, because it can't be millions, it's billions and billions of dollars. Most importantly, this decision will help America defend and dominate the high frontier, as they call it. I want to thank Secretary Pete Hegseth. He's doing a fantastic job, and Secretary of the Air Force Troy Mink. Troy, thank you very much. Great job you're doing, Troy. This is such a big deal.
Can you guys
This is
hear me
one that
over his
everybody
voice?
wanted to know, what are you doing? I also want to thank Senators Katie Britt, and I want to give my condolences. Your grandmother, her grandmother
Okay,
just passed away. She was
We have another
100,
flip
right?
here at
She loves you,
250.
Mr.
Well, and she was very proud of you.
Thank you very much.
Very, very proud of you. So thank you, Katie.
Wonderful woman.
She must have been. To produce you indirectly, I can tell you she
So
had
where
to
did
be.
they start when he opened?
Tommy
They started at
Tuberville, who's a great
63.97,
coach.
63.98.
And
That's good. At least it's
I won't
above
say anything
this,
about what
this
happened
zone.
with Alabama
So
football this weekend.
let me mute him for a second.
But you're not used to that,
can
right?
talk.
You're not used to that. But Tommy,
Okay. Do you see what I was trying to explain here, guys? Remember how I said, like, ideally we want to be at least above 9.7, okay? Why? Look, this was exact increments too. Look, he started at 4.8. We want to be at least above 17 points in range. Do you see this? This is pretty insane, you guys. If you're actually paying attention, look. They actually held exactly 17 points, and they retraced exactly that 34 point ratio off lows. Based on the actual point when he started talking here, I think it was close to 16.5 or something. Sorry, this is kind of messy. Like right here, do you see this? So that means you probably had closer odds to like 16.5 times 2, so like probably closer to like the 30. Do you see what I'm saying? Isn't that insane? Look at that. And our odds were 48, 50. They held the line off that 17 point ratio. What does that imply? Don't get this wrong. What does this imply? And look at the 250 break here. Right to my spot. Do you see that? Okay, all of you that got that answer wrong earlier, whoever said 64.13, whoever said 64.15, whoever said 64, whatever you guys said, do you see why it needed 64.08, 64.0875, 64.10? These are the neutral ranges. You guys were fetching a little too high, okay? You don't necessarily need to get back to here or even the 20s to reduce risk. You just have to get at least that 64.05 area. And it makes sense from a calculated approach, but it also makes sense from the base theory approach of getting back into that neutral box. Does that make sense, you guys? So Booth was on the right track there. We don't really need 15, 16, 18 though during this period. We just have to get back at least here. Okay, this is the area. Okay. Is there going to be pressure though to break here? Yes. Okay, so obviously there's going to be some implied pressure here before 3, because we want to try breaking a 17-point range. A 17-point range would give us our 64.1425 break. That's a neutral zone break. Do you think that's a coincidence? Off that 246, 248 stick? What do you guys think? Probably not, right? So I don't think that that's a coincidence. That would be the neutral zone break, which is what we need. What could this imply if they give us a clearance of 64.14? So they avoided risk back down here. They held a proper ratio. They retraced exactly what we needed. So everyone understands why we needed 6405, 6408 during this time? Yeah, well, I would say at a minimum, it could maybe give us some odds of getting the full zone test. 643175, do you see it? 6424. That's also probably going to be the 60. This would be like, this is a 44-point break here off lows, okay? This is going to be like a 60-point ratio here. Off opening range, which was the 6490 area, I'm pretty sure this is the 34-point ratio. Do you see it? Do you guys think that's a coincidence? So if they break another 17 points above here, okay, above the, maybe I should make this a different color, hold on. Let me just clear the chart. So off opening range, which was back here, if we broke a 34-point ratio or a 33-point ratio, we'd be breaking and testing the top of the zone, okay? Close to 3.2, 3.1. I think the odds are closer to like 3.175-ish, but whatever, we'll just mark these. This was a really good sustainment here, okay, off the 17-point range. Let's say. I'm just going to mark 17, even if it's like 16.75 or 16.5, just to make it easier for you guys to remember. Okay, if they were to break, and it's not a coincidence that this break right here, like a 17-point break right here, would also, like off this range here, especially that 4.8 stick, is also going to be a break above 6414.25. That aligns so well, you guys, with my strategy, right? That's the neutral zone break. So if they were to break another 17 points from here, that should give you alignment with this area here. Do you see it? So that's 34 points off opening range, which also happens to be the 17 or 34 point extension off the sustainment at 2:48 p.m. That's obviously not a coincidence, right? And it's relative to the kind of range that you get. So if they were to actually clear this 44 points off lows, 43, 44 points, it should also align with this area here. Definitely a lot more pressure though as this time approaches before 3. So let's see. They're still struggling a little bit with the wall here. Let me just start cleaning some of this up. But do you see the alignment with 643233? Okay, so everyone's in alignment. I'm just going to unmute him.
First administration for the president to set up Space Force, and I think an equally visionary move to make sure that Space Force is right where it should be in Huntsville, Alabama. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, anybody want to say anything? Would you like to say?
Mr. President, another promise made, another promise
So we
kept.
had some pressure here
You
to
think
get back
about
to
it,
0508
Redstone
during the
Arsenal is critical to
4850
national
period.
security. The president said,
Do we have some
when
pressure
he was
here
the
around
45th
3,
president, let's do what's right
305
for
to
national
try getting
security.
back
And today, that's exactly what
to
we're doing.
6414,
It's not
13?
because of this or that. It's because it's right for national security. You think of the 21 categories that were evaluated to determine what was best for national security. All indicators pointed back to Huntsville, Alabama, and Redstone Arsenal. We have the right people at the right place at the right time. Mr. President, on behalf of the people of the 5th Congressional District,
Yes,
and
right,
all of
because there's
Alabama,
obviously
thank
going to
you
be
for,
risk of
keeping your word.
they're keeping this like right in between right here. Do you see this?
Mr. President, I want to say thank you, and thank you for doing this because it was the right thing to do. All the when they looked at all the numbers, Huntsville was the place to go, and like you say, it was unfortunately pulled out, but you made
This,
it right. So I want to
this actually might catch some people off guard though,
and
because
to the state of Alabama, we're very grateful. Thank you.
even though this is a lower high, like beneath here, is this technically high enough to give us a break of this
Thank you,
range?
Mr. President.
What do you guys think? Even though this is technically a lower high right here, from where they stalled, is this technically enough to break this range?
What we're doing with moving the Space Command to Huntsville.
And we
is
have
absolutely
some odds
critical
at
to
3
our
and just
maintaining
after 3.
dominance in that sphere. And it
I think
goes
it was,
hand
like,
in hand with
closer
what
to,
we're
like,
trying to do with the
303.
Golden Dome and missile defense.
I'm
to
gonna
defend
watch
against
this
anyone
5-minute
else
window.
who
What do you
tries
guys
to enter
think?
that sphere. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And obviously, national defense is a huge issue. And when you look at the scores, Alabama was #1, and for political reasons, it was moved out of our state. But, Mr. President, thank you for making priorities the defense and the warfighter and the safety of this nation. And in the big,
What do you
beautiful
guys
bill, that
think?
Golden Dome will be
Yes.
built in Huntsville,
I
Alabama.
did
and
cover
we're
some
grateful
on
for
that
Thank
test
you.
here, just in case, but this to me looks like there's a
Listen,
decent
Mr.
odds
Chairman
that
of the
they
Armed Services
can,
Committee, I care
like if
very
they
much
hold
about
above
what's
the
most important
02,
for our
03,
national
01, like
security.
this
And
orange
the
box area
President
here,
held a nationwide
and
competition
they retrace
to
back
determine
at
where
3,
we should
between
have
that
this
3,
command.
305 window.
If y'all remember,
They
at
could
the end of
definitely
that
try
competition,
retesting
where
that
Alabama came
60
in first. There was a lot of complaints from the other states who did not place
413
well.
area.
He said, we'll do it over with new criteria to accommodate.
Because all we
your
had to do
concerns.
was meet these
Alabama came in
conditions here, which they
first
did.
in
They
that
met
second competition.
6405 at
His Secretary of the
248.
Air Force
They
reviewed
held
the
64,
results, said it was fair, and the
6398.
president
They
named Huntsville.
broke 6408.
It was the Biden
Okay, they
administration
stalled 6412.
that decided to make it political.
We didn't really have high
Even
odds of
though
taking out
his own
6414
Secretary of the
at
Air Force
this point in
said
time
it was a
anyway.
fair competition and it should
Higher
be in
odds closer
Huntsville.
to after 3.
So I want you to know I appreciate this president standing up and being strong and saying he's going to make this right and put it where it rightfully belongs. That's Huntsville, Alabama.
If they don't break during this period, is this where we'd have some risk? Yeah, it did, and I noticed that the levels that we're working with on NQ are actually pretty accurate, so 'cause I've been testing the NQ
Start something else.
theory here,
But I
using
just
the
want to
same
congratulate
logic,
you.
and
It's a
it's
very
working
big deal.
really well.
When you come
So
out and when you leave,
I think
the
you
room,
guys
you'll
are
see
probably
that,
safe to use
we
that
just,
template then.
Over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat.
Really
a lot of
nice
drugs
breaks
in
here,
that boat.
guys. Look at our 3 o'clock
And, you'll be
stick.
seeing
3
that, and
o'clock
you'll be
retesting,
reading about that.
640850.
It just happened moments
Exactly
ago,
what we want to see happen at this time. This is
our
kind of the reset of the
great general,
248, 250
head of
period.
the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's been so
With slightly better
incredible,
structure this time.
including
So what I mean by
took
that
place
is
in Iran,
there's probably like a
knocking out,
5.5 ratio,
potential
which means maybe you
nuclear
can
power
break
for a
6
long
to
time
5.5
come.
points higher this
Within a
time.
month
So
they would have
64,
had it.
16,
We didn't do what we
17.
did.
I
But
think I
he
did. I could
gave
share
us
it
a
again
little
though.
bit of a briefing.
I had the
and
highest
you'll
odds
see,
around
and
like
there's more where that came
303,
from.
so we'll watch
We have
around
a
this
lot of
point
drugs
in time
pouring
here.
into our country, coming in for a long time.
Anyway, I
and
hope
we
this
just
is.
these came out of Venezuela.
I hope it's helping.
and coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So
I don't know.
we took it out. and
I've just
you'll
been
get to
back
see that
testing it. I just didn't want to put
after
something
this,
in there that was like
after this
obviously
meeting
wrong,
is
you
over.
know. But
Do you have any questions, please? Yeah, please.
Senator Cumberville talked about the cost savings
Yeah.
associated with his announcement. Can you talk about the strategic benefits by having Space Force Command headquartered in Huntsville?
Well, it just works because we have so much else there. And having a central, you could call it a central command, but it really is a command station. Also, even locationally, where it is, and when you think about
right, let's
flying
see.
distances, if you can save
What do
a
you?
half
I
an
should have
hour
done
as
some
fast as
polls.
some
What do
of
you
these
guys
planes
think?
go
Do they
and things
clear
go,
here
and
at
even the rockets
Izzy's
go, if you can save by
calculated
having
time?
the best location. So we went out, as you know, to experts.
There
And
technically
we
could
had,
be some odds
four
closer to like
different
308,
groups come
310, but
of
it was
experts. They
better
all
if they
said this
tried
was
at
the
least
best
testing during
location.
this time.
I also loved it from the standpoint, I
let's
know
set
the
this to a
people of
minute. Could you guys
Alabama,
vote
they
quickly,
are
though,
great
'cause
people, work
There
hard,
isn't
and there's
that
no
much
games.
time, so the
They're very
period was
proud of
between
it.
like 303
And
and
I would say they
305.
fought
We do have
harder
some
for it than
odds around
anybody
like
else.
308,
A lot of
310,
states, 5
but I
states
definitely
really
don't want
wanted
to.
it. But they wanted it more, and
I definitely don't want to wait
kid you
too
not when I say
long
that
to
these
clear the
people,
neutral zone, at least to like
they
test
spoke to me a lot.
6413. Do you get what I'm saying?
That's all they wanted to
Can we
talk
get some votes
about.
on that,
They didn't
please,
want to
guys?
talk about the weather. They
Really,
only
really
wanted to talk
important
about
period here. The next
moving
2-3
to this
minutes,
location, moving
especially
to
for a
Alabama,
retest,
Huntsville
at
in
least
particular.
retesting
So,
these sticks here
we're honored
and
to do it. They really
progressing.
wanted it badly, and they
So,
got it. Peter?
even getting a closing stick above 12,
social media trend over the
13 would be
weekend.
okay.
How did you find out over the weekend that you were dead?
This was the earliest
See that?
period here, so
People didn't
let's
see it for a couple days. 1.3 million user engagements as of Saturday morning.
I hope this is
Words
helping
and
you guys
Minds.
navigate through this period, though.
You know, I have
Like,
heard
I could have
it's
streamed
sort of
earlier, but I'm
crazy,
like,
last week I
it's
did
almost not
numerous
too
news
easy down here, but
conferences, all
I
successful.
figured this would be
They
the
went very
easier
well,
point in
like
the day.
is
This
going
is
very
probably going to
well.
be the most difficult
And
point in the
then
day for most people.
I didn't do any for 2 days,
Thank you
and
for
they
the
said
contribution.
there
So
must
no,
be
okay,
something
that's
wrong
fair.
with him.
So far,
Biden
I
wouldn't
think
do
that
'em
that
for
could be
months.
true based
You
on
wouldn't
them
see him.
stalling
nobody ever said
6408
there was ever
here,
anything
like at
wrong
the
with him,
302,
and we know he
301 stick.
wasn't
Do you
in
see
the
what I'm
greatest
saying?
of shape.
I think they
No, I
needed a
heard that.
little
I
bit
get
of progress.
reports. Now, you knew
Around
I
like
did an interview that
6409,
lasted for about
6410.
an hour and a
So
half with
you're
somebody.
probably
and
right.
everybody
They
saw
could
that was
easily
on
negate though
one of your competitors.
on this
I
stick.
did
Let's say if they
numerous,
close
shows
above.
and also did a number of truths.
Let's say they
long
retrace
truths,
this
so I
back,
think
they
pretty
close closer to
poignant
here.
truths.
I
No,
could
was
see
very active over
304
the
maybe
weekend. They
getting
also
the
knew
stick
I
break, but
went out to
303
visit
had some
people
odds
at
of range, so
at the club that I own.
we'll see what kind of volatility
pretty
it hits.
nearby
This
on
is
the
also the
Potomac
period
River.
too where they could break
And
beneath
no, I've
this
been very
box
active
right
actually
here,
over
so
the
like they could
weekend. I
test
didn't hear
beneath
that one. That's
6402,
pretty
okay?
serious stuff. Well, it's fake news. You know, it's just so.
So they brought
it's
it
so
back to
fake. That's why
6405. I don't know if you guys can see
the
that. They
media
brought
has
it
so
right back to
little
that
credibility. I
that
knew
248
they were
stick. You see
saying
this?
like, is he okay? How's he feeling? What's
How
wrong?
important is
I said,
it
I
if
just
they're not
let-
breaking range
and
here
it's also sort
on
of a
upside
longer
for them to
weekend, you
negate
know,
at
it's Labor Day weekend,
30405?
so I would say a lot of people. No, I was very active this Labor Day. I had heard that, but I didn't hear it to that extent. Go ahead.
Oh,
Peter.
sorry guys, I
We know
have
this
it
country
turned
has a
down
huge
completely on my
problem
side.
with school
Not even
shootings.
listening
You've
to it. Let me
said
just
that you're open to sending the National
the
Guard
site.
pretty much anywhere.
Sorry. Is that better? I had the volume completely turned down on my computer. I didn't even realize I still had it playing. Yeah, very important that they at least try negating during this period. Will that give us that extension for 308? 310? And remember what we said earlier? We had about a 36-minute window. So obviously we could still have like a similar type window here, but you don't really want that during a period of volatility, right? So you want to do that usually in about how much of that time range you think? What do you guys think? How much of the time range would you want to do that within? So even though they technically could afford, yeah, probably at least half that range, right? Like even though they could afford going all the way through till this period here, like 324, 28, probably not going to be the best for volatility. So I would say like half the range would probably be better or safer, like 18, 19, 20-minute interval. So I think we're hitting close to the 18-minute mark right here off the 4.8. Okay. We're hitting closer to the 18-minute mark around 309 off the 251 stall. Does that make sense? You guys? And that's why there's still time here. It's just I would have preferred that they did it during the earlier interval just to reduce the risk a little bit. Because I feel like once it's past 310, 312, the risk is going to get super high if we're still trading beneath this range. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's do a second poll here because this was... Okay. How many think that they'll break during the calculated time? 50% time interval here. This is probably more important than the 303, 305. I think 303, 305 after stalling was important for sustaining above 6404, 6402. But I'd say testing the range here is probably more important than it would have been at 303, 305. So I'm going to vote yes this time. I voted no the last time based on where they held. And I just want to see if they can at least retest these ranges here. And like I was saying, we don't necessarily have to fully take out this area, but at least retest during this period so it gives us better odds of clearing during this point in time here, which aligns with the imbalance prints. What are people in that chat even saying? I swear people like on whatever are just insane sometimes. So like those YouTube chats, they're crazy. And we could also measure from like the calculated times that I had back here at 4243, which makes sense because this ended up being the structural low right here. So if we're looking at it from that point of time, and our timing, guys, was pretty accurate. 4243 ended up being the low. 48 was when Trump spoke. This is pretty insane. So we've had really good timing here. There could be some odds like in between if we look at it like this, like on the extension. So like closer to like 319, 320, like during this period here. That's more in line with this low. So that probably is a more probable time of day. Does that make sense, guys, from that kind of logic? This period is a little bit more sideways, like back and forth. But what do you guys notice about the post 3 p.m. period? This is also important. What do you guys notice about the price action and range post 3 p.m.? So let's maybe mark the 318.19 on here in a different color just so that we know that this is more linked with that low. What do you guys notice about this period in time here between, let me just start deleting some of this. Okay. 308 retrace 6408.50. Is that a good sign? It's tighter, yes, but it's also doing something very specific post 3 o'clock. Look at the colors. What are they doing a really good job of during this time period here, post 3 o'clock? Sustaining where? Yeah, they're really trying their best to avoid playing with fire, right? Which is like the 6402, 6404, 03, right? Like they're really trying their best to stay above this 02, 03 area, okay, and stay a little bit more neutralized, which means keeping it closer to like 6407, 08, 06. So far they retraced 6408.50, but no real breaks yet here. We had some odds around this 410 period. It seems like this is probably going to be the more likely point in the day because it's more aligned with the low points. Are we still okay on time? I'm going to make some coffee actually. I found pumpkin spice syrup yesterday at Marshall's. I was pretty excited about that. Usually that stuff is like sold out. We're not getting too thin yet. I think we met conditions. So they sustained during this period here. They retraced during this 308, 310 period here. Okay. We have essentially till around 328, 330. So there's still half the time left. It's just you have to at least have progress made during these time intervals. Otherwise, that risk is going to stay high, like especially off the 50% range. I found this interesting too because this 3 o'clock stick was the 18-minute interval off the 42 calculated time, and that's when they retraced here. So that's why I was thinking this period's probably important. But if we base this off the actual stick highs, do you see how it's more in line with this period here? Like closer to 327, 28. Do you guys see this? Like, right? Or like this period here. Do you see that? So it's not that this is... These points in time, I think, are still pretty important to see like where they retrace and sustain. So what do you want to have happen after 308, 310? And this is very important now. So kind of like this box here, maybe if I clear this out, you guys can see it. So this period here, it's okay, I guess, if you can stay within this red-ish range. Okay, let's just say. Okay, this period here, then you've got this period here. Okay. Do you see the difference? What do you guys notice here? And this is pretty important that they start building and basing better structure, especially post 3. Post 30305. Okay, 08, 10. What do you guys notice here? This was the 4.8 or 4.2, 4.3, which ended up being the exact range and lows here. Okay, we had our 50, 5.1. What do you guys notice here? This period you could afford some risk down here, right? As long as you retrace up here. This period you could still afford some risk retesting 01, 02, 03, right? Once you get closer to like 304, 05, 08 though, do you really want to be back beneath 64, 05, 06? What do you guys think? Probably not, because now you're running super short on time. Okay. Back in here, I noticed at 303.05, they did breach a tiny, tiny bit beneath the 4.8 stick. Like there was a tiny breach here. So kind of like playing with fire. They breached also here at like the 5.8 periods. I don't know if you guys saw that. Like this little tiny, tiny breach right here. Okay. Your pressure is a lot higher during this time period. Earliest point in time here, I think, was 317, if I measure this correctly, and 318. So pressure gets super high. And this is off our 4.2 sticks, especially if we're working with like 32, 36 minute intervals. Okay. So you need to base a little bit better and break a little bit higher. So a little bit higher in range and a little bit higher in sustainment. And I think that's going to be the key here. And that makes sense because these differentials are basically what will give us the odds of breaking a tiny bit higher, which is what we need, right? So like this kind of closing stick, 1.75 higher, could give us an odd of breaking 1.75 higher. Do you see this? Do you see what I'm saying? And that would give us an odd of potentially finally taking out this spot and testing that 14.25. Same with this range right here. So, okay, let me do a poll since... Okay, this window here, crucial off Izzy's 342 or 242 hold. These were calculated times. Clear 64.13, 64.14.25. So even though they have odds until like 324, 328, 327, do you really think I want to be just testing 64.14 at this period in time, or do you think I want to be breaking higher during that period? What do you guys think? Yeah, at this point in time back here, I would prefer that they would be already trading above 64.14 so that we have odds of at least retesting 64.22, 23. Do you get what I'm saying? And maybe that'll give us like a 44-point range break off lows here if they did something like that, like maybe the 16, 17 area. So let's see, breaking at 317, 318 is going to be the most ideal. This is directly linked with that 242, 243 hold. I could be off by a minute or two. Those yellow points in time are the highest odds of retesting the 64.13. Can someone in the Discord document the 317, 18, 19 sticks, please? Especially since I calculated 242, 43 manually back here. These are really going to help us in terms of structural support and structural breaks. So really good support down here at 998, 97. That was the first retest and break beneath OR. This should be the first retest and potential break above these failed structures here at 12 and 13. 64, 12, 50 retested here at 317. 64, 12 closed there at 317. 18, 19 have some pretty good odds. I hope this is helping you guys. It should help you guys, I would think. There we go. Calculated time of day, 318 testing, 64, 1375. 64, 14, 25 to the exact penny here. This is the exact range we need at this point in time. This is also 34 points in range off that structural hold there. And a 17-point break. Okay, we said 16.5 is probably the most likely, and that makes sense because that's the exact range that they held back here. So we'd probably get similar range back there off OR. So 16.5 point hold. 64, 14, 25 was the exact spot that I calculated earlier, especially for that point in time. Do you guys know how crazy that is, that we can calculate that exact point in time and price? That's pretty wild. 64, 14 was the exact calculation too. And this is also 34 points off that structural break, and a 17-point break off the 4-2 stick. That's pretty crazy. Look at that. That's insane. So I would say conditions are met. Okay, post 318.19, now we want to be above this box here. This is whoever said 64, 16, 17 earlier. Who said that? Who was it that answered that when I asked earlier back here for 0508? Yeah, I don't think it was you though. There was someone else that said 15, 16, 17. I don't remember who it was. This point in time, post 318.19, this is when you want to start building and basing better structure. Okay, so off these points in time, especially off the 4-8 stick, okay, this is a 17-point break. Do you see this? So at this point in time, post 319, that's when you want to start breaking. Look at that. Do you see that immediate break? 320 breaking immediately, which is exactly what you need. That's a 17-point break off that 248 range, which is also a 17-point break off today's real-time open. That's where there's alignment around that 14, 15, 16, 17. This would be the time interval that we want to be above the 13, 14 spot, because that's going to help us get back to our 64, 22, 24 retest, and ideally get to the 64, 31, 32, 36, whatever. Okay, the market doesn't owe us higher than this area today. If it wants to take us back to the 50s, they'd really have to try pushing during this period. We definitely don't need to get back to the 50s though. I think even just getting back and nesting in here is more than enough in terms of range, but this is the period in time where, and I don't know if it helps drawing these arrows or whatever, but this would be more of like a time period that, yes, you have to meet these conditions. Like you have to get at least 64, 15, 16, 17, especially post 319. So like off this 320. Okay. Because by this point in time, what do we want to be retesting? You guys, around 328, 27, 24, 30, 32. What do you want to be retesting at this point in time? Back in here. I'm going to mark 336 even though it's not calculated today, just because this is a generic flip for imbalance prints usually. What do you want to be retesting during this time period here in this interval? Yeah, at this point, it's okay if you go a little bit back and forth between like 08, 10, because we never really based above this area that much. Like, so it's not terrible if they did, but you definitely want to be testing the 16, 15, 17, 18, 19, like this range in here during this time, so that you have odds of doing what? What do you want to do during this time interval here? Basically between imbalance prints. What do you guys want to do during this time period? This would be like your cutoff period. So all we have to do today is try pinning around these ranges here. Okay, if they want to take this back and forth a little bit, that's okay, like we were saying, as long as they kind of sustain these neutral type ranges. But I'd say around like the 328, I think 327 was actually the earliest period here, 330. You probably want to be at least testing these ranges here to mitigate the risk of heading back down all the way, obviously, to here. What would you want to be doing during this point in time here? Ideally. We're not going to get channel if they don't give us at least a 6422 test during this period, Snack. Like, you need at least to get above these ranges to even have an odd of getting to the channel, I think, during this period. So what do you guys think? Like, especially because these are becoming like the 18-minute intervals off the 18-19 sticks. Do you see this? So I do know that 3536 is going to be super important. And then this is probably aligned with the last 5-10 minutes of the day, and it is. So like there's definitely odds for end of day today. They need to start sustaining exactly so that they could at least try testing 6420, right? 12 is too low. Basing above 12 is okay, but that's not what you want to do at this point in time. If all we're doing at 328, 330 is basing above 12, that's not really going to be progressive for pinning in this area here into the close. So I would say that we want to be, yeah, you want to base above this area here, like 10, 12, 9, but closer to like the 328, 330 window. I'd prefer that they at least try retesting 64, 16, 17, 18, like this range in here, to give us some decent odds of getting a structural break around like the 336, 338 window. Does that make sense? So like this window here, you could probably mark 32, 33 as like the midpoint. And those would be the 18-minute intervals off highs too, and off that 318, 319 stick, okay? Which extends us through 354, 56, so on and so forth. So it's not wrong that we want to sustain, but I would say sustainment's probably more important closer to 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7 even. But you need some retest here at 2.8. Does that make sense? 328, 330 more important for retest of bull neutral zones, aka 64, 15, 64, 18 area. Because that's going to increase your odds of getting some retest here. I think we said that because it's a core-to-core week, you can probably watch the recording, but core-to-core, usually you get 51 to 56-ish points, right? Core areas are usually 70s, 20s, okay? We opened at 6.4, 7.8, which is a core area, correct? So you probably have high odds of 64 20s, which also gives you odds of like 63 70s. Does that make sense? Which can also give us odds of 65 20s. if we base this on, and it makes sense too, because the exact ranges that we had today were, these are literally core to core moves. Look, 53 points here off the actual session open to where they held back here. This was like 56 points, okay, to where they're retracing back here. Like usually a core move is around 51, 56 points. That's why they're stalling these core ranges here. If they want to be generous and give us a 66 point break, that's how we could get back to like 6-4, 3-7, 3-8, 6-4, 40. Does that make sense? So getting back into the channel is definitely the goal, because it'll keep us nesting between your core ranges, okay? Channel equals nesting. So if we can nest between a core range, which is, I don't know if it's easier to just look at it like this. These are core areas, and it is a core week. So these are core ranges down here. These are core ranges up here, okay? Hence they kind of stalled 8-5, held 6-6 back here. Do you see that? This was core consolidation. This is core consolidation. We just didn't want to nest too much in this core area because that could have taken us down to 63.20s. Does that make sense? Which we don't really want. Otherwise they would have nested this channel instead. So if they can nest us in the channel, that's going to be the best case scenario. So these are other secondary core areas. These are the midpoint core areas, which is going to be between like 19 or 20 to 32-ish. Okay. Does that make sense? And this can essentially get you back to this, which is basically your all-time highs. It's a core-to-core week, but they obviously have some progress that they have to make in order for that to be the case. Okay? It's better structural breaks this time is the goal, which I talked about at the beginning of the session. And I don't know if this helps you understand it better, but usually a core-to-core move would mean like having better structural holds and closing points. So opening at 6-4-7 is actually good. It's a better structural close or open than these past structures here at 6-6, 6-8, 6-7, 6-9, right? Back in here, I had conditions set in the report that opening above 7-1, closer to like 7-4, 7-8 was more ideal. Do you see what I'm saying? So even though this looks bad, it's technically not. Kind of like this area here, like 8-9, 8-4 is not bad. I would have preferred 9-3, 9-6. Okay, they started getting some better structure here at 9-3. So this could, the 7-4, 7-8 areas could actually set us up for better structural closing points around like 9-7, 9-8. Do you get what I'm saying? But only if they give us better structural closing points here, closer to like the 20s or 30s. Like back here, they hit 6-4, 14, 6-4, 15. These are not 6-4, 19. Do you see how they failed? They failed the channel at 6-4, 3-5, 3-3. So we want to base higher. We want to, like, if they can close us this time at least above the 20 area. Does that make sense? Minimum? Maybe if they get us like in the 40s, this will be a better structural hold, which will give us a better odd of getting a better structural close. So then this is like a lot better. these were the 18-minute intervals off the 330, the 318.19, okay? Then there was that post break at 320, so which is in alignment with this here. So what do we want to happen in this stick here, guys? If you're paying attention to detail, okay? What do you want to happen in this stick post 338? This is the post follow through stick, kind of like what happened at 320. What has to happen here during these periods here? It's already happening. It has to show some follow through. No. That's what you want to happen right now, is sustain 12. Who cares about 12 at this point in the day? You have to break 20. Okay? Kind of like back in here how the post follow through had to test at least 15, 16. Okay? What do you guys notice the difference between this period here and this period here? Okay? What do you guys notice? It's very obvious. I noticed back here they broke immediately above, but they failed to continue. Okay, do you see this? Here they stalled at 19, but then they immediately continued to test 20. What could this imply? And it's about a 4-minute duration. What could this imply? Where do you want to be at this time? Post 338. How are you guys not understanding this? No. During this time, you had to have immediate follow through. You did to 16, but you stalled, okay? And you reduced range down here. You reduced range and delayed, okay? At this point in time here, you didn't quite test exactly 6420 at 19. Was it important that you had to do it at 340? Yes. Okay, so it's not a delay. This is offsetting the risk that you had back here, especially off the 6420s. So could this reduction back here be applicable here? In the inverse though? This is the 4-minute window. So this candlestick right now is going to be the same as this candlestick here. Kind of like how they had to fight here to defend itself. This is the same thing. Does that make sense? I would say yes to keep it in play. I do wish that they would have had immediate breaks at 339, but they immediately defended that with the 3-minute follow-through sticks, okay? Obviously, if they wanted to really, really expand, they would have broken up on this 4-minute cutoff, okay? And I bet this would have probably given us a retest of this area here, like these highs. Do you see how they reduced range here? Do you guys see this? Especially off like these sticks. Like close to like 4.25 points. Do you see that? So they had odds here. They reduced the range a little bit though. The extended periods through 54, 5, 6. Well, I had max range for real time closer to like 3175, 32, but a lot of that's going to depend on where they take this back to by like obviously 350. And we had calculated times at 54, 55, 56, so these are definitely range reduction sticks, and most of this is due to them stalling at that 4-3 window. We can kind of watch these areas here. Just applying the reduction ranges as potential odds, because this is what I was seeing. Let's mark this past high here. How many think they'll give us? Let's do a poll. Max range. I'd say conditions would be 4.8 has to get back at least above 20, okay, to reset these conditions here. So you want to break these sticks where they stalled before 50. Do you see this? This will give you the best odd of resetting if it's during this period here for the 5.4, 5.5 retest. I still think we can get 30, 31, 32 personally, okay? Especially if they can break and retest the range at this point in time. Can everyone vote, please? I want at least like 30, 40 votes for this. Because we have some pretty good odds for end of day. And this was such a good long trade-off. 6.39798. Okay, you have to break the 2.2 area here. 64.22 is core. Based on the reduction, there was calculations around 64.2550, 64.2750. Do you see this? 64.24 being retested here. We had really good odds for continued breaks at 354.56, especially if we get some structure breaks at 350. 64.25 being tested. That's what I calculated based off this reduction. Do you see that? Are you guys okay if I mute myself and focus on my positions into the close? Just because I did do some SPX at 348. Okay, I covered half the SPX. The condition here is going to obviously be that they have to clear 64.25, 64.2550 and test at least 2.750. These were calculated based off these reductions here. Ideally off the 5.4 stick, guys, okay? If they give us that of 5.4, 5.5, 5.6 was calculated and they have pretty decent odds to get to this. I think it's 3.175, 3.2. I could be off by a little tiny bit. Let me see. Because if we're basing this off here, I think that would be a 32 to 33.5 point break off our 4.8 stick, okay? Oh, maybe I'm off a little bit. 3125. 30.75. 32. Yeah, this area here. A lot of it's going to be based off what they do at 54, 55, okay? What did you guys vote for? 643133. That's what I voted for too. But it's going to depend on what they do here for sure. Are these good enough areas to pin us? Okay, there it is. 642550 tested here, guys, at 54. It's exactly what we want to see at this point in time. These are calculated price points and time points, okay? 50 tested 25. Perfect timing and price. Can someone document that stick, please? And that's going to give us really good odds for our 5-5, 5-6 sticks to break. 5-6 had better odds than 5-5 today, which is kind of strange because usually it's 5-5, but we'll see. I think 5-5 has to at least close over 6-4 to 5-50 to give those good odds back here. Is this helping you guys? Give us that 2-5-50 close, come on. Nice. We have really good odds, guys, of taking out that structure high here at 5-6. That was the calculated time here to take out this break right here, 5-5, 5-6, and then that could push us the last 4 or 5 minutes. We need to test at least 2-7-50 though, I think. NQ got some really clean moves. This will set this up nicely. I'm going to take a little bit more off right here. And the only reason is if they decide that they want to reduce range off 3-2 by like 5 points, then this is where they could cap it. I still think that they have a decent odd because they're at least testing 2-7-50 here, 2-7. Okay. This is the overhead. Pretty clear that 2-7, 2-7-50 is the overhead though. I covered a bit more, guys, at 5-6 because they stalled 2-7, but I left 2 here for end of day. I just want to see if they can close over 2-7, 2-7-50 for 58. This 5-9 stick could have some good odds. These are definitely enough to be considered max range, but we'll see if they can push it or not. I think it's going to be relative to breaking this little wall right here. At least we calculated this properly. And usually we'll know by like the 30-second interval. But do you see how if they don't push, it's because that 5.6 didn't clear 2.750? That was part of the conditions. So they did test it though. But I'd say they'd have to at least close back over this range within the first like 15-30 second interval of the final closing stick, because otherwise that could be capped. And this is due to the reduction period here. And that makes total sense to me because it seems like they tried to reduce range by like 5.5 points. Does that make sense, guys? Like beneath this 3.2. Do you see that? Based on what they did back here. That's why I was pretty comfortable with 2.750 maybe being the max. And a lot of this was based on what they did at 5.4, because 5.4 you had to at least clear. They tested 5.50, 64, 25.50, but I didn't like that 5.6 couldn't close above there. Okay? Or test it. Like, I feel like it should have at least closed above at 5.7. We'll see if they do it on the final, like, 4 p.m. stick. There's some odds at 4, but there's still odds we get there for after the bell, but real time do you see how they limited range here? A little bit to 2.750, 6.4, 2.750, perfect range for real time. Let's see if they get this 2 hours, 64.30s, after hours. I have to sign off, guys. Really good session today. Please review. This is a great pin. 64.26 is a good pin. This is the exact 55, 56, 57 ranges that I was talking about. This is perfect range for us, okay? This is enough to give us core to core. We just wanted to get back into the 20s. 56.5. That's insane, you guys. Remember we talked about this earlier? And we said that, I think it was off of here or something. Here? Do you guys remember this? And we said that when they stalled back here, this was 56.25. Isn't that nuts? I told you. That's crazy. So that's where they stalled. And that would make sense because breaking this would imply that they could give another core-to-core break, right? That's what would get us back to 8.5, 8.8 retest. Another core break from here is what would get us our odds of getting maybe to the channel. Isn't that cool? They hit exactly that 56.25 that we talked about earlier. That's insane. I need to go back to show you guys that because that's actually crazy that they did that. Where was it? This. Can you guys see my screen? Isn't that crazy? That's pretty crazy. And there was that 5-point offset that we had all day. That was what they reduced the range by at that time, was the 5 points. That's why they didn't give us 64, 31, 64, 32. It was that 5-point offset we discussed this morning, which seemed to be the theme. That's genius, actually. That's this 5.5 points. Do you see it? Which means that they probably reduced range by like 5 points. Pretty interesting. They hit exactly 56.25. So my thoughts would be if they close above 56.25, okay, off lows, they have odds to take out this 8.5 overhead. Okay? So maybe pinning above 2.7 would be the most ideal. Does that make sense? Because pinning above here, like a 58-point ratio, let's say, will give us at least an odd of getting a break back to 8.7, 8.8, which will break these overnight structures. And we want to do that ideally by the 4th. Okay, I'm gonna sign off, guys. Great session today. We made it back to our 64.20s like we wanted. Hopefully we can pin conditions ideally above 64.22, 64.24. Best area would be closer to 642, 750 with 642964. And this gives us odds of zone by the 4th to give us odds of retesting the 64.20s. Channeling that would be like 64.30s. You guys can write this down, okay? Basically take us back to the means to trigger ranges as early as tomorrow, 64.70s. Got it? This is what I drew earlier. This is the pattern I drew earlier. They give us better structural closing points here, okay, which can give us better odds of breaking this structure here. Maybe they give us a 9.7, 9.8 test. So could we technically get back to the zone as early as tomorrow? If we're gonna reset our conditions. So, you know how I said like this could give us better closing points here, better than this here, okay, which can give us, you know, better than this here. Remember how we couldn't get those proper closes above 2.8, 3.1, 2.7? Do you guys remember that? Back in here, back in here. Do you remember? They kept giving us those shitty closes. So it's not that 2.4, 2.5 is bad. It's that obviously 2.8 to 3.2 is better, okay? So review the conditions from like back in here and back in here and you'll understand this is like a reset of this structure here, which can give us a better structural close back here, okay? So even if tomorrow doesn't retest highs, that's fine. It could be setting us up for some better structural closing points, maybe closer to like 9.7. Does that make sense? 03, like it could be setting us up for something like this, and I think that would be 128 points off lows. Yeah, it is, if they did something like that. Okay, so hopefully this structural close is setting us up for a better structural break, which will give us the higher odds on the 4th to take out range, and maybe we actually hit 65.40s that day or something. That's the goal. Okay. So I really hope they pin this in above 2.8 then. That would be the best case scenario for us. Look at these range breaks here. There it is, that triggered 6433. So they still had odds of doing this, but more so after the bell. We said that they could take this to 60. This area here, right? 3.8 to 4.1. So far, this is already looking better, you guys.